So one Saturday morning, shows up at in my kitchen. I had made the muffins. John Rensenbrink, Jonathan Carter, Ben Shipman, and Oliver Outerbridge. And I fed them muffins, and we sat around and we talked, and John Rensenbrink gave me an autographed copy of Against All Odds. You're my man, John Rensenbrink.
That's pretty overwhelming. Can you hear me?
A little bit more volume.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to launch into my speech. We live in the dwindling days of a once proud republic. The government we once felt was ours, or might be ours, or might at least be accountable to the people, has fled from us. We live in the era of purchased government. Purchased government. This is true to quite a degree at the state level. It is wholly true now at the level of Washington, D.C. It is a government that is controlled by huge corporations, especially financial corporations. It is a government that tramps down on people's rights and freedoms with righteous impunity. It is a government that sops up our taxes for foreign entanglements that George Washington would be aghast at, but that the Washington of our day exults in. A smattering of dollars are grudgingly allowed for the people's needs, while gargantuan sums are shoveled out for ever more glittering and horrifying ways to kill people and destroy the people's environment. Adding insult to injury, government institutions that once only admitted in whispers that government was for purchase now blatantly parades the fact, so that even so renowned an institution as the Supreme Court declares that money is freedom. Money counts. Money wins. Money in politics is not only okay, it's just the way things are and ought to be. Meanwhile, the people perish. A woman in the car ahead of me yesterday had this bumper sticker on her vehicle: "I am having an out-of-money experience." So, back in 1984, we saw some of this beginning to happen. We had seen it coming on in the late 60s, in the 70s, and in the 80s, in the early 80s. We intuited that the voice of the people would get dimmer and dimmer, that the people's needs would get shorter and shorter shrift, and that the coming ecological crisis would be coming on strong, would be coming on more and more compellingly. Little did we know just how bad it was going to get. We could not really have imagined, could not have known just how little was going to be done about it by the government and by the big corporations and financial institutions. Indeed, we could barely have conceived their degree of denial, their perverse refusal to act, and act in a timely way. We took the plunge, a fateful one, I think. We decided to form a new political party, a green political party.
Thank you.
But hearken to this. On that day, January 14, 1984, we decided to form not just a new party, but a vehicle that was once a party that was at once, at the same time, a party and a movement. We deliberately said that to ourselves. Why is this? Well, we were after basic change, fundamental change, healing change, creative change. And we wanted to do it not by insurrectionary means, but by in-your-face coercion and by violence if necessary. We knew enough to know that going the route of force and violence not only creates terrible mayhem, but is also impotent. Even if you win, you simply install a new power elite. Our vehicle would be a party in tune with the many movements for change. Its major keys for action would be the ballot box, the sacred ballot box, and an equally sacred thing called dialogue. Only those keys would be or could be the answer to force, coercion, and violence in bringing about basic change. It goes without saying that this takes time. Not something that can happen overnight. So a new kind of commitment is required. The search for advantage and opportunity, yes. The will to act, yes. The wisdom to know this will take a while, indeed. And deeply to nurture in those of us taking action, to nurture an abiding commitment to changing the world. That especially we sought and seek others to join us who have this commitment. That's also why it's going to take more time. Not everyone has that deep commitment. And that is the fact of life. And that is what we've discovered in all our goings on. But at the same time, it means that we have a quality organization. We opt for quality in an era of mindless quantity. That especially is our message to young people. They are responding. Look at this audience. Thank you, young people. This is the most welcome, and it's a glorious thing. Not only welcome and glorious, it also enables me to play a much more low-key role in the party from now on. We've set about to change the world and are doing it with gathering momentum. Examples. We've had help. We've looked for help. We've been rebuffed by people who we want to help, but they've turned elsewhere to the Democratic Party, but we're still there to help. Like Pat says, we still love. But we've had help, but we've been the spark plug in so many ways. We put a big dent in the nuclearization of Maine, and it has been stopped. We did it in 3 campaigns. We stopped signal. You may not know this, but in my part of Maine, mid-coast Maine, we stopped Signal Corporation. That's an international corporation. We stopped Signal Corporation's campaign for a waste-to-energy plant in the mid-coast. This made it possible. A point that is often eluded and forgotten, but this made it possible for the towns in the mid-coast to take up recycling of waste and to do it in earnest, which in fact has happened. We stopped clear cutting in huge campaigns headed by Jonathan Cole. We pushed the envelope hard on getting Maine ready for single-payer health care. Thank you, Pat Lamarche, for being a mover and a shaker on this. You really put your heart and soul into it. I also would like to recognize Claire Mortimer, who's not here tonight, but she was also a great star in this regard. We certainly have played a role in the peace movement. I mean, there's Rosalie Paul over there. And Christine Detroit. I only mention those two because they're such magnificent people. But there's so many of us here. Jackie Devenot, for example. And so many of us have really been spark plugs in the peace movement. We do it unobtrusively. We do it gently. We don't expect necessarily to have peace movement votes, but we would like it. But you know, that's the kind of dance we've got to play. We pushed hard for clean elections, played a role in that. We helped a lot in pushing for gay and lesbian rights and gay and lesbian marriage. We have people who have been extremely important in the cooperative movement. Jane Livingston, Betsy Garrett. And of course, we are increasingly playing a bigger and bigger role in what we call localization, local farms, local food. There are many, many land trusts in which we participate, again, not necessarily wearing Green Party on our sleeves, but we would like people to know about that. Ecological education around the state, and certainly in my area. And that has been also a tremendously rewarding experience. I'm thinking of Carla Rensenbrink, whose activity in the Rensenbrink Thompson Land Trust and in Cataz River Education Alliance has been storied and will one day be written up. We are now marshaling people power to stop Monsanto. And guess who was the spark plug in that? You heard her, saw her. And she's a Green, she's a member of the steering committee. Talk about the union of party and movement. Yeah. As I have mentioned, we are very active in localization movements and in the entire emerging development of a new economy at the grassroots. We are pushing hard for solar and wind power. Solar and wind power that's for the people and not for the big organizations and the big corporations. And I want to mention Randall Parr. who helped stop the highly dangerous gas terminal in the Searsport region.
Yes, thank you.
And he is now organizing a coalition for public banking. That's interesting, Randall, that we are now calling it public banking and not state banks. But that means the same thing. North Dakota, as you know, has a flourishing state bank. It is a tremendously powerful wedge to take away the money power from where it is now and lodging it with the people. And this man, Randall Barr, is running for the State House as one of our 15 Green legislative candidates. Talk about movement and party going hand in hand. We are walking on what we talked about back in the 80s and 90s. We are walking on two legs, the movement leg and the party leg. And it's not easy, it's not been easy, but it's extremely fruitful because each one completes and nurtures the other. And it's going to get better. I should also mention, of course, that we have, well, I should say, we're about to hear also after I'm done talking, we're going to talk about those 15 legislative candidates. They will be identified and honored shortly. Fred Horch presiding. John Eder is not here, but I recall him, for example, he was our first voice in the state legislature back in 2002. And this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a follow-through with that. Not from him, because he's not a candidate, but from one of our 15 candidates. I think that momentum is there. I should also mention, we should mention something about Portland. Portland is really amazing. We had a heck of a time getting started there back in the 90s. A heck of a time. And then suddenly, in this century, wow, it's really taken up. And it's the young people who have really come forward to make that happen. And we have amazing representation with David Marshall and others in the town council, the city council. And also, we may not know this as much, in the school board. Hans Rivaro and has recently won an election there. And there's a missing a name. Seeliger. Yes, exactly. And I think we also have Josephine Bocat, who Josephine, didn't you run for the school board? Yes, you did. And she's going to run again, I think. And no reason why we can't double that number of 15 legislators, people in the legislature. In 2016, and then with more momentum behind us, we go even further in 2018, and we will return to field a candidate for governor. You heard that here, and it's going to happen. So we are rich and mighty. Rich and mighty in the things that count. The ballot box and multiple dialogue and being persistent about it, because I do think that those are treasures that the human species had actually invented. Although it's true that animals do a lot of communication, and animals do a great deal of negotiation, and we can learn from that. And that's also the deeper message of ecology, how much we can personally and together collectively learn from how animals do it. And don't just think about something you might be thinking of. Although that too! I end with something I want especially I want to leave with you. It's about Abraham Lincoln. He's meant a lot to me, personally. I mean, all his books and all the books about him I've read. But you know his parting words in his Gettysburg Address? He ends, as you know, with this incredible statement. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And you know, he really meant it. So many 4th of Julys go by, and I've quoted those words. Lots of people quoted the words. But people sort of say, oh yeah, that's nice. Oh yeah, that's nice. Well, it's more than nice! Because he really meant it. And that's what I leave with you. Really mean it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And my name is Fred Horch. I'm the treasurer of the Green Party. I'm on the steering committee. I'm also the chair of the Legislative Recruitment and Advisory Committee. And I just want to take a moment to thank John and also the organizing committee tonight who have put together this wonderful event. I want to thank Jackie and Gabriel and Betsy. Thank you very much.